Chapter 1, The Glitter of an Elite Evening. On a cool evening, when the city was immersed in a soft twilight and the first rays of sunset painted the skyscrapers in golden shades, an elite restaurant located in the heart of the metropolis began its magical transformation. The building's facade, sparkling with glass panels and exquisite architectural elements, reflected the lights of the city, as if inviting guests to enter a world of refined luxury and unearthly comfort. Inside, a spacious hall with high ceilings and elegant decoration resembled the palaces of bygone eras, where every detail, from marble columns to luxurious chandeliers, spoke of the highest taste and impeccable craftsmanship. At the entrance to the restaurant, there was a young security guard whose job it was to weed out those who did not meet the high standards of the establishment. His gaze, attentive and disciplined, scanned each guest, assessing their attire, demeanor, and overall impression. Every evening, he watched as people in expensive suits, glittering show business stars, influential businessmen, and noble representatives of high society entered the establishment. Their faces, filled with self-confidence and nobility, reflected success and self-assurance, and the light rustle of silk ties and the shimmer of precious jewelry created an atmosphere as if time slowed down here, allowing them to enjoy every minute of the luxurious ceremony. The place was especially lively that evening, the sounds of jazz music coming from a specially equipped corner with a live band mixed with the quiet hum of conversations and laughter, filling the room with a festive atmosphere. The spotlights softly touched the faces of the guests, emphasizing their elegance, and the aromas of exquisite dishes served on porcelain made the heart beat faster. Everything here spoke of the fact that every moment is filled with meaning, and every meeting is an opportunity to enter the circle of the chosen ones, those who are able to appreciate true beauty and sophistication. The young guard standing at the entrance, accustomed to the monotony of night shifts, carefully watched each person entering. His job required not only observation, but also the ability to quickly assess people, finding in their appearance something that could tell about their inner world. He knew that in this hall they valued not only external brilliance, but also true quality, which manifested itself in the manner of holding oneself, in the confidence of one's gait and even in a slight shade of modesty hidden behind expensive clothes. His gaze, sharp and penetrating, gained more experience with each passing hour, allowing him to notice the smallest details, how a hand curled once, neatly folded behind the back, or a barely perceptible smile on the lips of a guest can tell more than any words. In this magnificent setting, the restaurant turned into a real temple of secular culture, where each guest was not just a visitor, but a participant in a big performance in which life played the main role. People who came here for a business lunch or a social rendezvous treated the details with trepidation, from the choice of a glass of wine to the gestures with which they greeted acquaintances. Everything here was thought out to the smallest detail, high-quality music, harmoniously blending into the general background, skillfully decorated interiors, creating the illusion of an eternal holiday, and even the atmosphere itself, which reminded us that a different, almost magical rhythm of life reigned here. For the security guard, this evening was like a small universe, in which every moment was filled with meaning. He saw how some people passed by with ease, as if carrying within themselves the confidence of their own choice, while others, perhaps experiencing slight indecision, lingered on the threshold, as if wondering whether they were worthy of entering this world of luxury. His inner intuition told him that behind the external strictness of the dress code and impeccable style, much could be hidden, history, destiny, perhaps even a secret that could change his own understanding of the world. This is how an evening in an elite restaurant began, an evening filled with the radiance of brilliance, sophistication and anticipation of unexpected encounters. This moment became the starting point for events that would soon change the usual perception of everyone who stepped over the threshold of this establishment. In this splendor and severity, where everything, from light to sounds, created a festive atmosphere, the young security guard, as the guardian of the threshold, was preparing to become a witness to a fateful meeting that would soon change not only his view of people, but also the entire course of the evening. Chapter 2, An Unexpected Meeting. In the midst of an ordinary evening, when everything was going according to plan in an elite restaurant and guests, dressed in impeccable suits, confidently walked under the stern gaze of a security guard, his attention was drawn to one unexpected silhouette. Among the shining outfits and refined style, this person stood out for his modesty. An elderly man in shabby clothes, with an exhausted face and tired eyes, sat in the shadows at the entrance, as if he had accidentally found himself on the threshold of a luxurious establishment. His appearance was far from the glitter and glamour that reigned in the hall, and every wrinkle on his face told of long years of trials. The attentive security guard, accustomed to judging people by their appearance, immediately felt that something was wrong. The usual balance of high standards and refined taste was disturbed by the unexpected carelessness of this stranger. The security guard, following the rules of the establishment, decided not to let the man in based on superficial criteria only. His clothes were worn out and his appearance did not meet the expectations of an elite restaurant. He pretended that his choice was obvious and, not knowing the whole story, refused entry. At that moment, quiet exclamations of surprise were heard in the corridor, and several guests exchanged glances, as if sensing that something unusual had happened. The gazes of the restaurant staff seemed to seek confirmation of the correctness of the guard's action, but some of those present, with curiosity and some bewilderment, tried to understand why such a strange man was not allowed in. Meanwhile, the man himself showed no anger or aggression. On the contrary, his gaze remained calm, and his face expressed not so much despondency as deep thoughtfulness. His quiet demeanor and modest appearance contrasted sharply with the splendor of the surroundings, which raised questions among those around him. Who was this man, and why was his fate so different from that of the other guests? His presence seemed to carry a story that everyone was silent about, and soon rumors began to spread throughout the room. The restaurant staff whispered, explaining to the security guard that this elderly man was in fact a famous person, although not in the guise familiar to the public. It soon became clear that there was more to his modest appearance. A conversation overheard from several witnesses revealed that the elderly man was Sylvester Stallone himself, the legendary actor whose career and life were full of trials and triumphs. This news, like a bolt from the blue, stunned not only the guard, but also everyone present. It turned out that the celebrity, accustomed to public fame and dazzling brilliance, had chosen the path of modesty and privacy, preferring not to flaunt his wealth and status. It was at this moment that the guard, realizing his mistake, felt the full depth of the lesson. Appearances can be deceiving, and the true value of a person lies not in his clothes, but in his soul and life experiences. Thus began an unexpected encounter that already foreshadowed changes in the perception of the world by those around him and the guard himself. His initial decision had been superficial, and now he had to realize that even the strictest rules sometimes conceal a place for humanity and wisdom. This chapter became the starting point for further events, in which each participant would be forced to reconsider their views on appearance, status, and the true dignity of man. Chapter 3: Solving the Mystery. In the midst of a fine dining restaurant, where every move of the guests seemed carefully planned, a moment occurred that could change the usual perception of the world of luxury. While the waiters carefully served exquisite dishes, and the sounds of jazz quietly flowed through the room, a scene full of unexpected discoveries and deep thoughts arose on the threshold. The young security guard, still confident in the correctness of his initial decision to not allow an elderly man with shabby clothes into the establishment, witnessed how with every whisper and glance of the guests the situation acquired a new meaning. The restaurant employees, quietly talking among themselves, began to spread rumors that this stranger was not at all what he seemed at first glance. At first it seemed that his appearance was just an accidental discrepancy with the standards of an elite establishment, but soon the rumors turned into a clear message: this elderly man is Sylvester Stallone himself. The guard, stunned and confused, could not believe that the man he had rejected just a minute ago turned out to be a legend of world cinema. The guests' gazes, previously filled with surprise, now sparkled with approval and admiration. A buzz of whispers filled the hall, and everyone present that evening felt that something fateful had happened. A secret that many had tried to hide had suddenly been revealed to them. The walls of the restaurant, as if absorbing the energy of this revelation, sounded a new melody, filled with respect for the true essence of a person, which does not depend on attire or external glitter. At that moment, the security guard felt his inner world change. He realized that his judgments, based only on external signs, were wrong. His mind was filled with thoughts about how simple, even casual clothes could hide a multifaceted personality with rich experience and life wisdom. Colleagues and restaurant employees, addressing him with quiet but insistent words, explained that Sylvester Stallone, despite his world fame, preferred to remain modest that evening, perhaps wanting to test the sincerity of those around him and find out how much people are able to judge by appearances. These words, spoken with genuine sincerity, made the guard feel the full depth of human nature, where true greatness is hidden not in the brilliance of appearance, but in a soul filled with experiences and experiences. The rumors that were spreading around the room were turning into a clear confession. The celebrity, who had gone through many trials, chose to remain incognito today in order to experience the reaction of ordinary people. The room was filled with a quiet but heartfelt discussion. Many guests wondered why such an outstanding person decided to look modest and why he found himself on the threshold of this establishment on this particular evening. Some even claimed that his appearance was a conscious choice, allowing him to experience real human warmth, to understand what it was like to be forgotten by society, although in his soul he remained great and unconquered. The guard, standing on the threshold between two worlds, now felt his own sense of duty and responsibility being tested. He realized that his role was not limited to merely checking the appearance of his guests, but included an understanding of the human essence that could be hidden behind any surface. His thoughts revolved around a phrase he had once heard from an older colleague: "Don't judge a book by its cover." It was at this moment that this wisdom took on a whole new meaning for him. He felt the bitterness of his own mistake, but also gratitude for the lesson that fate had taught him. His gaze met the older man's, and in that silent exchange he saw not only an apology, but also a quiet acceptance, as if the man knew that every trial was an opportunity for personal growth. While the waiters continued to quietly carry the atmosphere of the event into the hall, new ideas about what was truly important began to form around the security guard and his interlocutor. People whispered that a person's true wealth is measured not by the number of expensive accessories, but by life wisdom and experience accumulated over the years. This evening became a lesson for many, forcing them to think about the fact that each of us is capable of changing if we learn to look beyond the outer shell and hear the voice of the soul. So, on that fateful evening, the revelation of the secret about the real identity on the threshold of an elite restaurant became the starting point for deep reflections on prejudices and true dignity. The guard, having realized his mistake, could never look at people superficially again. His gaze became more penetrating, and his heart opened to the understanding that behind each face there is a whole universe that cannot be assessed only by appearance. This meeting became not just a sensation for the guests of the establishment, but also a powerful reminder that every secret, no matter how disguised, sooner or later finds its truth, capable of changing the perception of the world around. Chapter 4: The Climax of the Confrontation. At the height of the conference, when the hall was filled with animated whispers and tense anticipation, a verbal battle unfolded on the stage, capable of appending ideas about the boundaries of what is acceptable in journalism. The atmosphere was filled with electrifying tension, the spotlights cast long shadows on the faces of those present, and every word seemed crucial, because it could become a decisive argument in the battle of ideas. At this fateful moment, the journalist, confident in her ability to cause a sensation, asked a series of tricky questions aimed at revealing the personal secrets of Baron Trump's parental dynasty. Her voice, at first firm and challenging, gradually acquired a tone of increasing nervousness as the audience increasingly expected that the young interviewee might not be able to adequately answer such provocative questions. But Baron's response was astounding. Instead of being flustered or emotional, he began to lay out his answers like a master strategist, with logic, facts, and deep analysis. "My parents made decisions in an environment that was far from today's standards," he began, "and to understand their actions, you have to consider the historical context and their personal circumstances." His words, delivered with calm and confidence, instantly silenced the room and rethought the skeptical listener's expectations. Each line from the young Trump was structured like a carefully rehearsed speech, with each thought having its own logical chain, and each argument, supported by personal examples and objective data, seemed to cut through the taut fabric of preconceived notions. The journalist tried to continue the attack, asking questions with increasing persistence, hoping to provoke him into an emotional reaction again. But the more she tried, the clearer it became that her questions were not aimed at constructive dialogue, but at creating a sensation at the expense of personal details. Young Trump, responding to each new accusation, calmly argued that every family has its own complex history, and it can only be assessed in the full context of all life circumstances. In my family, he confidently continued, there are no easy answers or unambiguous judgments. Every choice, every decision is the result of long reflection and circumstances that cannot be assessed superficially. His words sounded like a challenge to stereotypes. They carried with them not only the protection of personal dignity, but also a call for a deeper understanding of human nature. The room, which had just moments before been watching the journalist's every outburst, was now filled with quiet admiration. Many in the room, previously expecting a scandal, began to realize that it was Baron Trump's confidence and maturity that made his answers truly convincing. At this point, even those who supported the journalist's provocative approach began to think about how unethical it is to publicize private aspects of someone's biography without due respect for their history and personality. With each line, the young Trump demonstrated that true strength lies not in the ability to attack, but in the ability to answer the toughest questions with dignity and logical rigor. His answers were filled with references to facts, historical examples, and personal experiences, making them irrefutable. I respect everyone, he said, but true respect begins with understanding that we are all human beings, each with a complex, sometimes painful, history. To judge a person by their appearance alone is to miss the essence of their existence. These words, spoken with cold clarity, were the final straw in the balance, where reason and compassion prevailed over attempts at manipulation. The tension reached its peak when the journalist, noticing that her provocations were not causing the expected reaction, tried to ask another question aimed at humiliation. However, the next word from young Trump, pronounced with the same confidence as all the previous ones, finally changed the course of the interview. At that moment, the audience exploded with applause. The audience realized that it is logic, endurance, and a deep understanding of life that are the true indicators of personality, and attempts to manipulate emotions are alien to a real intellectual dialogue. And so the climax of the standoff became the turning point of the evening. The atmosphere, filled with tense emotions and harsh words, gradually gave way to a calm acceptance of the truth, where each side, even the journalist, was forced to acknowledge the strength of the argument and the depth of the human story. The feeling hung in the room that this moment would forever change the idea of how public debate should proceed, not through sensationalism and provocation, but through respectful dialogue and mutual understanding. Chapter 5: The Victory of Erudition and the Condemnation of Prejudice. As Baron Trump's final words echoed in the spacious room, a silence filled with profound understanding of what had just happened fell. At that moment, everyone present, from influential businessmen to young students, felt that they had witnessed not just an interview, but a real intellectual victory. Young Trump, confidently and coolly responding to every tricky remark, proved that true knowledge and prudence can surpass any provocation, and the power of argumentation can become a reliable shield from superficial assessments. His answers, logical, verified and filled with deep analysis, sounded like a lesson that could change established ideas about how to conduct a dialogue in the modern world. The audience, previously divided into two camps, now unanimously welcomed the words of the young Trump. The applause, initially restrained and hesitant, gradually grew into a storm of delight, as if each viewer realized that before him was not just a representative of a famous dynasty, but a man possessing amazing wisdom that could only be envied. Many of those present understood that the journalist's attempts to present him in a negative light were futile. Each of her words, filled with biased reproach, was reflected by cold reason and calm, which became a striking contrast to her emotional aggression. Behind the scenes, the first comments and discussions began to appear on social media, where the interview became the subject of lively debate. It was emphasized that personal questions asked with the intention of humiliating contradict the principles of professional journalism, and that the true dignity of a person is measured by his ability to answer with respect for himself and his roots. Many noticed that the young Trump not only managed to maintain his composure, but also managed to convey to the audience the idea that difficult life circumstances cannot be reduced to simple labels. His arguments, based on objective analysis and personal experience, became a symbol of the victory of erudition over superficial prejudices. As a result of this public confrontation, the journalist found herself at the center of criticism. Many leading publications and authoritative experts condemned her methods, calling them ruthless and unethical. Her attempt to create a sensation only resulted in the attention being shifted from the accusations to the demonstration of the power of reason, and her remarks were interpreted as an attempt at manipulation, lacking respect for the privacy of the young man. Everyone in the room felt that a real dialogue should be built on mutual respect and sincerity, and not on an aggressive desire for sensationalism. After the interview, Baron Trump issued a short statement in which he emphasized that the public space should be a place for constructive exchange, where every point of view can be heard, but only if it is supported by knowledge and respect for the interlocutor. He noted that each of us, regardless of age or background, deserves to be treated with understanding and dignity. These words resonated with many, and in the following days, the topic of the interview became a starting point for a larger discussion about the boundaries of journalistic ethics, the importance of not sensationalizing personal issues, and respecting each person's right to privacy. Thus, the culmination of this interview was not only a victory of logic and erudition, but also a lesson for the whole society. All participants and observers were convinced that true greatness lies in the ability to conduct a dialogue with respect for each other, in the ability to look deeper than external attributes, and in the pursuit of truth, which is multifaceted and complex. The victory of the young Trump became a symbol of the fact that even in conditions of severe public pressure, reason and knowledge can triumph over bias and manipulation, leaving behind a light of hope and new standards for future discussions in the world of public life.